Here's a random re-review of the TV series She-Hulk Attorney at Law. This is a random review because this was a random rewatch, as there were several MCU series I hadn't watched since their debut, She-Hulk being one of them, which I had not seen it since 2022 when it came out. I did do a review for that series when it came out. However, 3 years later I have more refined thoughts and admittedly better videos, so I figured why not do a redux. It was also interesting timing when I decided to rewatch this series, which was about a month ago, and how over the last week, the star of She-Hulk, Tatiana Maslany, encouraged people to unsub from Disney Plus in wake of the Kimmel suspension. Actually, at the time of doing this review, that suspension was just lifted. In other words, it was as relevant a time as any to do a 2.0 review. I think this show is most known and infamous for being the most hated of all the Disney Plus MCU offerings, and I'm talking from a fan reaction standpoint. It's an interesting situation because if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, it's got a positive review from critics, 80%, but that fan score, 32%. F***ing putrid. In She-Hulk Attorney at Law, newly licensed lawyer Jen Walters, cousin of Bruce Banner, gains the ability to transform into a female Hulk. As She-Hulk, she uses her new super persona to advance her lawyer career while smashing bad guys, men, and fourth walls. The fourth wall breaking aspect is for me the most noteworthy aspect of this show.
You want to go back to your life as a lawyer, I respect that.
He doesn't mean that.
I remember seeing the fourth wall gimmick in the trailer and thinking, oh, they're doing that. It was noteworthy because it was the first fourth wall breaking in the sacred timeline MCU, as Deadpool was still 2 years away from his multiverse jump. Fourth wall breaking is an interesting balancing act when it's integrated into a series and world that previously had none of that. Too much of it can take you out of a story, which is why it is better used in a comedic type story, which She-Hulk obviously is. I think initially She-Hulk had solid use of fourth wall breaking, where it's just Jen providing status updates to the audience with a fun comment here and there. Eventually, the fourth wall breaking goes arguably too far, but I'll cross that bridge towards the end of this review. But the fourth wall breaking is for the most part an appropriate touch for She-Hulk, as that was a noteworthy thing from her initial comics. Again, more on that later. This show purely embraces its comedic tone, from the dialogue, type of humor, and direction. This approach is all the more extreme when you reflect afterwards that this takes place in the same universe as the more serious Black Panther or the Defender Saga Netflix shows. Unlike other Disney Plus MCU projects, this one feels most like an actual TV show with its direction, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some of the other projects can feel like a movie segmented into 30-minute segments. The big question though with this being a comedy is if it's actually funny. And unfortunately, that varies episode to episode. She-Hulk has its episodes where it's clicking on the combination of a good story, okay, I'll say decent story, with some worthwhile laughs. I think the first 4 episodes are legit good. This encompasses Bruce showing Jen how to control her Hulk powers. Then you had the trial of Emil Blonsky, aka the Abomination, and then an episode where Jen helps out Wong with some trouble he's in. All around, these episodes were just working for me, with the star Tatiana Maslany making good impression as Jen Walters. I could have done without that Megan Thee Stallion dance. That was the show trying a little bit too hard to be funny. It's the next set of episodes where this show runs into some trouble, mainly because of some pretty shitty stories. A copyright trial episode, a shitty wedding episode, and a group therapy episode. These were just not good stories by any means. Time wasting and empty. But the quality all around was just bad. Terribly directed, and worst of all, not funny, which is the cardinal sin of a comedy. However, I'll give credit to the end of the therapy episode, with the revelations Jen comes to when she's talking to the Abomination and his friends. It was easily the best character moment and non-comedy writing when it came to the show. Afterwards is when the show got back on track when it came to the quality getting better. As a major fan of Charlie Cox's Daredevil, I thought it was fun to see his inclusion here. You gotta keep in mind, this was Daredevil's first full appearance in a Marvel Studios Disney-produced product. He had No Way Home the year before, but that was just a cameo and it was just Matt Murdock with no devil persona. I liked here that they took the opportunity to show off his old school yellow and red suit. I thought the team up chemistry in action with him and Jen was fun. Writing wise, was this a great episode? No, but I had fun with it anyway.
Morning.
But the lack of an overall quality story becomes more apparent once you get to the final episode, where you realize there isn't really anything to invest yourself in. But to the series' credit, it pulls out a climax unlike anything seen in an MCU show or movie, as the fourth wall breaking goes to the next level, with She-Hulk literally breaking out of the Disney Plus menu to confront the writers of her show. I remember my feelings after initially seeing this sequence and thinking, holy hell, what the is going on? As insane as this whole sequence is, and when she confronts Kevin, no, not that Kevin, the author of the MCU, it's actually an impressive tribute to how She-Hulk was written in the comics. If you go back and look at those old school She-Hulk comics, you'll find those issues where she's complaining about the writing for her own comic, or tearing out pages she doesn't like. So this scene in the Disney Plus show was a clever spiritual successor to that, and naturally the most interesting part of this show. But circling back to what I said earlier, this is where fourth wall breaking can perhaps go too far, when it's used as an actual plot device, and not just breaking the fourth wall, but breaking the story and reality and the universe. Whether we ever see She-Hulk be a part of any Avengers scenario seems pretty unlikely. But if she ever was, you know it would be a little awkward when you know she has the potential to bust out of her own show or movie and rewrite things. Although to this climax's credit, they explain this crazy climax fourth wall breaking scenario is a one-off and can't happen again. But the show does leave you with the feeling of what the was that, because of how crazy the way things wrap up here. I was recently reading a timeline encyclopedia of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, aka the Sacred Timeline. And when I got to the She-Hulk section and this whole ending scenario, they didn't have a real way to explain it in a canon sense. This show varied wildly in quality. Comedy-wise, it did have its moments where I thought it was legit funny, and I'd say there were 5 out of 8 episodes that I either liked or even really liked, with the best 2 being the first 2. I didn't mind the Wong episode, I had fun with the Daredevil episode, and for as crazy as that final episode got, it was certainly memorable, and I gotta give it points for doing something different. It was those middle 3 episodes where things got pretty damn terrible, which is what I think sticks out most about this show to many. That and just not always having the best direction, and the show not always being quite as funny as they think it is. Still, didn't completely hate it. It was a mixed bag for me, so I'll split it right down the middle and say it was meh. Those are pretty similar thoughts to how I felt about the show when it came out in 2022, so I guess I just did this re-review for shit and giggles. For what it's worth, I'd watch She-Hulk Attorney at Law 10 times before I ever touch Ironheart again. I used to think there was a chance to see the She-Hulk character again in another MCU project. I always thought some kind of meetup between her and Deadpool would be fun in a battle of the fourth wall breakers. But to circle back to the beginning of this video, when you as the star of a series, or maybe former star, tell mass audiences to cancel their Disney Plus subscriptions, and it costs Disney millions of dollars, whatever plans they already likely didn't have for She-Hulk probably just went further down the drain. And I'm guessing in a story sense, you could just think of her as being trapped in the void from Deadpool and Wolverine. It's unfortunate that things play out in real life the way they do. The discussion around this show was already toxic enough from those who hate any female-led superhero project. But to be fair, there are some that just don't like the show for its quality. But things definitely got quite interesting over the last week. So that'll do it for this re-review of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Made it to the end of this video. Thank you for watching.